It's official. The BBB is here. The big, beautiful burrito. And it's delicious. Also, the Big Balance Beta. Live now. What up guys, ThePartyKnife here. Now the Big Balance Beta has arrived and been implemented, which means the next time you open Vermintide, it's gonna update, and well, all the changes that they decided to implement from the Big Balance Beta are now live in Vermintide. Now, what are these changes? What do they mean? What the hell is going on? Should I worry? Should I be glad? All these things, we'll go through them one by one. We'll take a look through the patch notes and sort of see if we can decipher these hieroglyphics. Now, as you guys can see here, we got the patch notes for 3.1, which is the patch that's implementing the changes from the Big Balance Beta. Now, I'll leave a link to the patch notes down in the description below if you want to look through them yourself. But anyways, let's give them a look. So starting off here, we got fixed a crash in Spoils of War and a store-related crash. Ain't gonna lie, that can only be a good thing. No controversies there. But then we get to game changes, and there are some pretty big implementations that affect pretty much literally every class in the game. Now, starting off here, we got added pseudo-random distribution to critical strikes and procs. Now, what the hell does that mean? Well, essentially, pseudo-random distributions are a thing that they implemented from Dota and Warcraft 3. And essentially what it does is it reduces the sort of the variation in proccing stuff. So let's say you have 10% crit chance, then if you just have a normal 10% crit chance, you could, theoretically speaking, crit 10 times in a row, right? Or you might crit 0 times in a row after 10 strikes, and that would be a normal distribution. But here, with the pseudo-random distribution, essentially what it does is it sort of reduces the scope. It's more guaranteed that the actual amount of critical hits you will obtain throughout, let's say, 10 hits with 10% would be 1. Over 100 strikes, it would be exactly 10. And the way it does this is by decreasing the odds of you getting a proc or a critical hit right after you just got a proc or a critical hit. But then the more times you attack in a sequence with a given critical hit chance, the odds of you then getting a critical attack will then increase over time, guaranteeing that eventually you'll reach 100%, and the higher your crit chance, obviously, the quicker you'll reach that margin. And that way, there's less randomness, so you don't get these sequences of 5 attacks, no critical, 10 attacks, no critical hit, or 10 attacks in a row, all of them critical hits, right? But it really changes a lot of dynamics, because as I mentioned, it reduces the odds of you initiating with a critical hit. So there are loads of implementations and loads of things that this affect, but whether or not it's a good or a bad change, I'm not certain yet. Only time will tell. Could be a good thing, could also be a horrible thing. I'm honestly not sure yet. We'll have to see, because I haven't been playing that much beta. I have been testing these things, but I haven't been playing it that much, so we'll see. Moving on, generic damage reduction is now calculated multiplicatively rather than additively. And that's, I mean, I don't want to say good or bad thing, but essentially what it does is it's a nerf on damage reduction. Normally, when we're talking power and stuff like that, it's good that things add together multiplicatively. But when we're talking about a reduction, then stacking multiplicatively means that the next damage reduction you get on top of the other will actually take into account that the first damage reduction has already been moved. So whereas before, let's say you had 20% and you had 20%, right? And you put them together, well, now you have a 40% damage reduction. Whereas now, you would get a 20% first, right? And then you have 80% left. Now the next one would only take 20% of that 80%, if that makes sense. Which means you'd only get a fifth of 80% rather than a fifth of the 100 on top. Meaning you essentially, it essentially means that you're going to have less overall damage reduction when you apply 2 modifiers on top of each other, right? So Bark Skin plus a mercenary ulti, for example. So that's also a pretty significant change. Then we have headshots and critical strikes no longer automatically applies the lightest level of stagger to enemies regardless of their stagger resistance. Now, this is another pretty significant change, right? Because essentially, before, if you got a headshot or a critical attack, there was a guarantee that that would set the stagger count to a mild stagger. I assume that's going to be a stagger count of 1, but exactly how that works, I'm actually not 100% certain, so I don't want to screw up here. But essentially, that's removed, right? Then we have buffs now appear in 2 rows in the UI, displaying a maximum of 10 instead of 5. Yeah, that's pretty nice. I can approve of that. So those were the overall changes. Let's move on to the specific weapon changes. One-handed sword, Kruber and Sienna. Finesse multiplier, headshot / crit multiplier increased to 2 for all attacks, up from 1.4 for light attacks and 1.5 for heavies. Now what the finesse multiplier does is it's essentially how big of a, like, what is the multiplier for a crit or headshot, right? So if you deal 1,000 damage on a normal attack, then let's say then you would in this case deal 1,400 for a light attack, and it would be 1,500 if it was a heavy, whereas now it would be 2,000. So it essentially just sets the multiplier for critical hits, headshots, and critical headshots. So yeah, that's a definite buff to the one-handed sword. Then we got the one-handed mace and the one-handed hammer. Light attacks 1 and 2 and push attacks now have a tank hit mass multiplier. Now, mass multiplier, there are 3 different kinds. You got the linesman, the heavy linesman, and the tank mass modifier. And essentially what these modifiers does is it's the way it's calculated is as a reduction in mass versus specific enemy types. Now, the tank mass modifier is the best. It's the one that works across the broadest spectrum, so to speak, versus most enemies. And by reducing the mass of the enemy you are attacking, in this case, that means you're going to get things like more cleave and more stagger, or a higher chance of stagger, right? So you're going to be able to cleave through more enemies. So having a tank mass multiplier is insane, and it's going to vary versus different minion types exactly how many percentages, and depending on the mass modifier, how effective it is. But yeah. So that's pretty much a guaranteed buff. Light attack 3 and 4 now have the same single target damage profile. Fair enough. Light attack 3 now has a 10% bonus crit to compensate for being an uppercut animation. So essentially just a bunch of buffs to the one-handed mace and one-handed hammer, which I think is good, because they weren't used that much, let's be honest. Moving on to the two-handed hammer, Kruber and Bardin. The push attack now has the same damage profile as the heavy attacks, no tank hit mass count. So again, they're talking about the tank mass modifier, I assume here. No tank hit mass count. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so okay. So I think what they're saying is that the heavy attack that has the tank mass modifier, and even though they've then changed the damage profile to be the same, then the push attack does not have this tank mass modifier. Moving on here, heavy attacks now properly puts enemies into stagger level 2, which was a bug fix. So that's pretty good. Can't argue with that. Moving on to the two-handed sword for Kruber and Saltzpyre. Now this is a really good buff, if you ask me. Movement speed, charging heavy attacks increased to 60% from 20%. Now one of the issues you would have with the two-handed sword often is that it was simply too slow. And this is going to make you way more mobile in between when you're charging up your heavy attack. And light attack animation speed sped up by approximately 10%. So again, that's a pretty good thing. So the attack essentially takes less time to animate. That's it. Which, if you're not a person who does block canceling, then that essentially can translate into attack speed. Not exactly, but theoretically. Okay, let's move on here. Mace and shield / hammer and shield. Light attack 3 has 10% additional critical strike chance, which makes sense since they also changed it on the one-handed hammer. Heavy chain now begins with a shield bash. That's pretty nice. Light attack 3 now has a single target armor piercing damage profile, same as the push attack. And push attack now chains into light attack 3. Oh, that's actually pretty good. Yeah, that's definitely pretty good. That's a much better combo when you can do a push block attack straight into light attack 3. That's definitely going to change the damage profile, so to speak, of the weapon. Mace and sword. Light attacks 1 and 2 now have the same damage profile as the one-handed mace, and light attacks 3 and 4 have the same damage profile as the one-handed sword, which makes sense since it's the mason sword, right? So I feel like that's a nice piece of consistency across the board. Each weapon in the heavy attack now has the same damage profile as the original Falcon heavy. Now, I don't recall the exact damage profile for the original Falcon heavy, so precisely what that implicates, I am not certain, but we'll see. And the armory currently doesn't work. It crashes the game, so I can't even go check. Even if I could, the armory would be unlikely to have been updated this quickly, so we'll see. We might do a follow-up to this, since they're probably also gonna, tweak some of these things. Heavy attacks and light attacks 3 and 4 now have a linesman hit mass count. And again, I assume that's just, I don't know why they worded it like that, but heavy attacks and light attacks now have the linesman mass modifier, right? Which is the same, not the same as the tank mass modifier, but it essentially does the same, but versus a different category of enemies. Let's see here. Halberd, heavy chain order reversed. The first heavy attack is now the heavy stab, and the second heavy attack is the heavy sweep. Now this is definitely a buff, for sure. Now let's see here. Intact attack chains. Light attack and push stab chain remains intact. Light 1 into light 2 into heavy stab into light into heavy stab chain intact. Okay, that's put in a weird way, but essentially they reversed the 2 heavy attacks. So what was heavy attack 2 before is now heavy attack 1, and vice versa. But you can still do the push block attack into light, like the double where you headshot, and you can still do the effective cleave strategy of light 1 cancel, light 1 cancel, light 1 cancel. Light sweep 1 chains into heavy sweep repeat. Oh, that's nice, right? So you can actually do a light attack and then a heavy attack. Which is a double sweep, so that might actually be preferable to doing just the light. We'll see. I'm not certain about that, but definitely it's an interesting change. If nothing else, then it allows for people who don't want to do constant canceling to actually have a nice sequence that they can just do fluently without having to do block canceling. So that's good. Heavy stab, heavy 1 chains into light stab into light overhead, light 3 repeat. Because that's a heavy stab into a light stab into a light overhead. Okay, that's pretty nice actually. So that's a new armor combo. Heavy linesman added to the heavy sweep, and armory mod will not reflect the change in heavy attack order. What? So heavy linesman added, and that's again one of the mass modifiers, but the armory will not reflect the change in heavy attack order. But why not? I mean, of course it won't, since it hasn't been updated, but I assume they're gonna update it? I don't know, I feel like that's weird. Like, that's a mod, and yeah, I don't know. Doesn't really matter anyway, since it crashes the game immediately, at least it did for me, and 2 of my friends, so I assume that's still the case. Dodge range increased from 0.95, minus 5%, to 1.0, 0%. Okay, so there's no longer a reduction in your dodge range compared to the Sub-Zero, compared to the baseline, which is good, right? Because literally it had less dodge distance than shielded weapons, which made no sense. Which is one of the early nerfs they gave it, because it was broken once upon a time, very long time ago. Anyways, let's see here. The Executioner Sword reduced animation speed by 8.5% for all attacks. So when you reduce the speed of the animation, that essentially means the animation takes longer time, and thus the weapon overall is slowed down, right? Because it takes longer to get to the point in the animation where you can then cancel and repeat. Or for that matter, proceed to the next attack. Light attack 3 now has a 10% bonus critical strike chance. I like that change. I think a lot of people will maybe dislike it because it's sort of, I mean, what people do when they use the Execution Sword a lot is they'll do a double light attack, cancel, double light attack, cancel. Again, it's this, you cancel out the third attack because it has the slightly slow animation. You can cut it short after the second attack, and you can essentially increase your attack speed. But this incentive gives you an incentive to actually go all the way to the third light attack, so I think that's a nice change. Tuskor Spear now has a normal block cost modifier instead of shield modifier. No! This nerf is totally justifiable. But no, not my spear. It's a good change. But I'll miss it nonetheless. It's definitely, because the Tuskor Spear was broken, right? It really was. So as much as I love it, it was undoubtedly slightly OP. Especially for the huntsman, so and the mercenary, obviously, since forgot what I just said. But yeah, let's move on here. Moving on to Barden's one-handed axe. Animation pause after light attack 3 reduced from 0.42 to 0.3. Fair enough. Light attack animation speed increased by roughly 8%, so that's attack speed increase, so that's nice. A reduction in animation time, meaning more attack speed potentially. Movement speed while performing light attacks increased from 75 to 80, that's also good, so a reduction in movement speed of 20% rather than 25. While attacking, heavy attack charge time reduced from 0.6 to 0.5. Heavy attacks now share a damage profile with a two-handed hammer, light attacks. One-handed axe with the two-handed hammer, light attacks. Okay, so the one-handed axes heavy attacks are the same now as the two-handed hammer light attacks. Okay, fair enough. Don't know if there's a logic to that, but I don't mind. That's all good. Moving on to the two-handed axe, we have heavy attacks now have a linesman hit mass count. Again, the linesman mass modifier. Light attacks 3 now have the same damage profile as light attack 1 and 2. Okie dokie, so that just means that you have three identical damage profiles of the attacks. Push attack now has linesman as well. Light attack 3 has a 10% additional critical strike chance. Okay, that's also pretty good. Again, an incentive to move on in the combo. Now has 6 stamina, 3 shields, up from 5 stamina, 2.5 shields. That's also good. It did feel like it was an issue for the axe, so I think that's a fine change. Axe and shield, light attacks sped up slightly, fair enough. Charge time required for heavy attacks decreased slightly, that's also good. Especially now that you initiate with the shield bash. Dual axis finesse multiplier on all attacks increased to 2 from 1.5. That's pretty huge actually. I mean, if you recall, the finesse multiplier is essentially the headshot damage, it's the critical hit damage. So that's essentially a damage increase of 33% to both critical hits and headshots. Then you got the war pick. Linesman hit mass count added to light attacks. I don't know why they don't just type that they've added the linesman modifier to the attack. Moving on to the juicy elf. Now the one-handed sword has essentially got a bunch of buffs, pretty much, in all ways. It deals more damage on the third attack to armor, and again it has an increased finesse multiplier, so more headshot, more critical hit damage, and so on. Then we have the elven two-handed axe, not glaive, it's a two-handed axe. And essentially they increase the amount of stamina by 1, which is really needed, or 2 stamina, 1 shield. And then they reverted the nerf, so it now again has a linesman modifier on the light attacks, which was needed. Then we got the elven axe, which really, come on, it looks so terrible. I'm sorry, but it just does. Anyways, it now shares a damage profile with the two-handed hammers light attacks, and it has a 10% increased critical hit chance added to the push stab. Really, they should add a dual wield elven axe for handmaiden, like a berserker maiden. Now that's something I would subscribe to, because honestly, this weapon could have a 100% crit chance, and I still wouldn't use it. It's just so ugly. Moving on. Dual daggers remove the 10% crit chance from light attack 1 and 2, fairly reasonable. Elven sword and dagger, and again, just to mention real quick, that promotes that you finish your attack sequence. That's the idea, right? Elven sword and dagger, the same, remove the bonus critical strike chance from light attack 1 and light attack 2, still has it on the heavy and light attack 3 and 4. Again, trying to promote getting further into the attack sequence. Dual swords has gotten a huge buff, 25% damage against infantry, as well as a 20% increase to the push stab armor damage. Then we got the Greatsword, which now has an attack animation speed increase of 10%. It really needed that. And the light attacks now have 10% additional crit chance, which it also really could use, because it was just altogether a fairly weak weapon before. Then we got the Elven Spear, push attack, light 3, and heavy 1. Now all have the Linesman mass modifier. And they reverted the 25% nerf to light stabs that came with Winds of Magic, so the base damage is up from 0.25 to 0.2. Elven Spear and Shield, light attack 3, changed from a poke to a sweep, so instead of a single target armor damage, it's now a sweep, which is probably going to change some potential combos. Definitely a good change in my opinion. Then we got this absolutely horrific change, if you ask me, of removing the Linesman and crit chains from the push attack on the Axon Falcon. Now, way back, that weapon was super broken. Then it got nerfed into, I wouldn't say into the third. It was still a really good weapon prior to this. But even with the increased dodge count and dodge distance, I still feel like, I mean, this was the niche the weapon had, right? Like, the push block attack was what made the weapon, at least partially, what made the weapon feel good. So I'm not a huge fan of this nerf, but we'll see. Falcon, extra stamina. Heavy attack 1 and 2, now the same damage profile as the Elf one-handed sword. Heavy is 1. Light attack 3 now has the same damage profile as heavy attacks 1 and 2. Not really that relevant, honestly. I don't see myself using that weapon very often either. Because when would you use the Falcon when you have the Axe and Falcon, right? That's the thing. Flail, definitely a good change. Light attack 1 and 2 have the tank mass modifier, which gives, again, massive cleave and stagger. So the light attacks and the damage of the heavy attacks increased by 30%, which it really just needed. It really just felt underwhelming, the flail, for quite some time, and it's just such an enjoyable weapon, such a different playstyle, so really enjoy that change for sure. Then we have the billhook, which is probably one of the most interesting and controversial changes they've made, that I think will piss a lot of people off. Not so much the dodge distance, which has been increased from 1.1 to 1.15. That's totally fair. Decreased the dodge count from 99 to 3. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. Didn't really make sense in the first place. But the special pull action, aka the hook attack with from the special button, that now costs half a stamina. Although the cost is only applied if you actually hit a minion. So you can still just do it straight into the air in order to increase your movement speed. But whenever you actually do collide with the minion to stagger it, then it's going to cost half a stamina, and I genuinely think it's a good change. I don't know if it's the right nerf, but the weapon definitely needed a nerf. It was super fucking broken. Like, there's no argument to be made. It was way, 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 way too broken. I like the weapon, and it's just going to be interesting to see if the balance here is as it should be. But definitely, I think it's a good attempt at the very least at implementing a nerf in an interesting way. Dagger now has dodge count of 6 instead of 3 on Sienna, which I've never understood why it didn't have that in the first place, since, you know, dagger, dual daggers. Why would one have 3 whilst the double daggers have 6? So that's good. And a 10% crit chance to the 4th light attack, again promoting finishing the attack chain. The mace has just got a bunch of changes, right? Max dodge count, increase heavy attack. Like, I'm not even going to go through all of it. Essentially, it's been buffed in nearly every conceivable way, right? Movement speed while you're light attacking, the range of your light attack, animation speed of the light attack, animation speed of the heavy 2 and 3, damage of the heavy 2 and 3, just all around nerf, right? Flaming Flail, the explosion of heavy 1 now deals direct explosion damage. I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that. I mean, I know it does an explosion when you like do the first heavy attack, but exactly what that means mechanically, I'm not entirely sure. But honestly, direct explosion, like, no one can argue against that being a good thing, right? But when is a direct explosion a bad thing? I mean, that is assuming you don't live in Beirut. Sorry, too soon, maybe. No one can. Direct explosion. Explosion direct, that can only be an amazing thing. Except if you live very close to a ship in Beirut. I'm sorry. I was maybe on the edge. My apologies. But it was, you gotta give it was kind of funny. Maybe that's just me. Anyways, moving on. Beam staff, huge buff, 33% decrease to the overcharge cost of the shotgun attack, and the weapon switch timing basically has been reduced. So it essentially fits all the other staffs, and the window after the shotgun blast is now going to fit the animation time, so you don't have this window where it just won't swap. Overheat of the shotgun blast, again Drakefire reduced 33%, and the dodge range buffed from again -15 to 0, which makes no sense. It was -15 in the first place, if you ask me. So that's also a great change. Empire Longbow, I'm kind of split here. Force, like the 25% movement speed, definitely good thing. So you don't have to stop entirely, right? Even 25% movement speed is still, that's not stopping entirely, right? So you can still move while you're charging your bow, which I think is definitely a good thing. I wouldn't want it any other way. But the forced zoom delay of 2 seconds, it might just be a matter of what I'm used to. So I'm not gonna say that's a bad change, but it felt awkward. It felt weird to me. But then again, it might just be the bias of being used to something else. So we'll have to see. Handgun reload time reduced from 2 seconds to 1.5, more ammo and more cleave to match the crossbow. Great, because it seriously needed that as well. Repeater pistol now has the linesman on the bullet spray, so the full 8 pellet attack, which is also great. More cleave on that attack, I think that's a good change. Swiftbow pretty much buffed on all the counts. So essentially more armor damage on the charge shot, more monster damage on the charge shot, and increased cleave, as well as for quick shots. So essentially more cleave, more damage all around. Throwing axes increased monster and berserker damage by 30%. Don't care, don't use that weapon. I'm just kidding. I guess that's potentially, possibly good. I'm not sure. I have no opinion, no comment. Volley crossbow for Saltspire, ammo pool boosted by 50%, more cleave, reload time reduced, and a dodge count increase. And the dodge count here, really important, especially with his new talent, but we'll get to that. Definitely gonna be an interesting weapon going forward with the Bounty Hunter, I think. We'll see, haven't tested it, but I can see the potential. Again, Shade Volley crossbow, just fit to match Saltspire's crossbow. Blunderbuss, more ammo, Grudge Raker, more ammo. Moving on to talents. Now, starting off with the Foot Knight. Now, I don't play a lot of Foot Knight, so I don't feel inclined to comment on whether or not these changes are amazing or horrible, but overall, it sounds decent. Kruber gains 10% power. The closest allies to Kruber gains 50% damage reduction and 10% increased power. Passive aura no longer affects allies. So that seems reasonable, and slightly more direct, effective, impactful was the word I was looking for, but then to a single player. So staying close to your Kruber now, to your Foot Knight, definitely makes a difference. Now doubles the radius of Kruber's aura. Yeah, fair enough. Reduces the cooldown of charge when an ally is incapacitated. That seems rather boring, so to speak, if you ask me. Merged with the defensive aura into increased damage reduction of protective presence by 5% per nearby ally. Moved to tier 4 mid-row. So that's a total of 15% of damage reduction potentially. Although, as we established earlier, damage reduction as a trait has been nerfed, so less strong for that reason. Staggering an elite enemy grants Kruber and his allies 100% increased cooldown regeneration for 0.5 seconds. Replaces the bloody teamwork in tier 5. So every time you stagger an elite enemy, everyone gets 100% increased cooldown regeneration for half a second, right? So that means per minion. But I wonder if they stack on top of each other. That's the question, because essentially, every time you then stagger an elite right now, a half a second is going to be an entire second of cooldown. But if you can actually stagger multiple elites at the same time with this, using like a shield bash, for example, then I can see the value, right? Because then the numbers could start to add up. If there can only be one of these active at a time, then it's, maybe. I guess it depends on the heroes you have on your team. Trample reworked. New name Battering Ram doubles the width of Kruber's charge and allows him to charge through great foes. Oh, that's gonna be interesting, mechanic-wise at least. Uh, that's definitely going to be interesting. Can't wait to check that out. I haven't tried that one out yet. Moving on to Mercenary, no longer removes temporary health and cooldown reduced by 20%. So instead of 40% cooldown reduction and no temporary health, now it's 20% and you still get temporary health, which is a good change comparatively, because no one ever took the 40%. Scavenger ammunition crates now drop at Guardian's feet instead of at the kill special location. That's pretty nice, that way you can be tactical about it, I like that. Killing a special has a 50% chance to drop an AL that increases attack speed by 3% and damage reduction by 3% for 300 seconds, stacks up to 3 times. So potentially 9% attack speed and 9%, and that's a 50%. Definitely like that. Like, you can't hate AL, right? It's like, it's not possible. It has AL, it's attack speed, it's damage reduction for the team. I like that, that's going to be interesting. Barding takes 30% less damage from the back. Headshots reduce damage taken by 30% for 5 seconds. Fair enough. That's actually... I can see why they had to nerf damage reduction with all of the new damage reduction combinations. That makes a lot more sense now. Accelerating Vapors. Allies inside Barding Smoke gains 8% attack speed and recovers 3 temporary health every second. If it was 3 permanent health, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. Doesn't seem that good, to be honest. Seems like fairly shitty talent. But maybe I'm wrong. Moving on to Barding Gorikson, the Item Breaker. Drake fire damage 120% and attack speed down to 50% depending on overcharge. Now I assume this attack speed is only for the Drake fire pistol specifically, or for the Drake fire weapon, and not just your general attack speed, but I could be wrong about that, but that is how I read the talent. Attack speed, I mean, it actually doesn't mention that but based on overcharge, I'm pretty sure it's only the Drake fire weapons that gets that extra attack speed. Let me know down in the comments if I'm wrong. Blocking an attack grants Barding and his allies 2% power for 6 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. Yeah, 10% power for blocking, I don't know. It's like me, fair enough. Doesn't seem that good. Also awkward to use. You want to block to give your teammates slightly less power for, I don't know, not a fan. Periodically generates stacks of Rising Anger every 7 seconds while Grommet is active, up to a max of 5. When Grommet is removed, Barding gains 10% attack speed per stack of Rising Anger. Now that is an amazing talent. I like that, because that gives you value in keeping your Grommet stacks up for longer. So I definitely like that. That's an interesting mechanic, interesting name, interesting everything. Like, it's a really good change. I like that, definitely. Vengeance. Moving on to the Handmaiden. Ooh, this is where things get spicy. No. Increase revive speed by 50% and 20% health back on the revived hero. Yeah, fair enough. Not much to say there. Blocking an attack or pushing an enemy makes Kirillion's next 2 attacks 30% faster and attacks deal 10% more damage. That can definitely be interesting, right? Because it promotes this push, attack, block, push, attack. So I can definitely see this being an interesting talent, especially due to her stamina regeneration, allowing her to push more. And then you have weapons like Sword and Dagger, where you only have half the push cost. So that could be pretty significant. It might even allow you to entirely remove attack speed from your as part of your arsenal, because again that's 30%, then you have 20% from Swift Sling, and then you hit the cap of 50% attack speed, allowing you to actually put 5% crit chance and then 30% power versus in terms of your charm and your weapon, or block cost reduction, of course. Dodge while blocking, increase dodge range by 20%. Grab the daggers, keep on dodging, 50% dodge distance, and just, dodge, jump, dodge, jump, and just keep going. Why kill stuff? I mean, why guys? Why kill stuff when you can win in less time without having to hurt anyone? Like, Shade, Cloak of Mist. New ulti talent grants 100% critical strike chance for 4 seconds after breaking stealth. Great change, nothing bad to say about that, since the previous talent was kind of, it was pretty meh, right? Sort of just adding a handmaiden dash to the Shade ulti. No one really used it for anything. Last but not least, we got Saltspire. Now, there's some interesting one here. Bounty Hunter, upon firing his last shot, Victor gains 15% attack speed and 50% power for 15 seconds. Not the best, because you don't want to play for running out of ammo. That's generally speaking not optimal on the Bounty Hunter. I mean, unless you have a Ranger Guardian, and you're just constantly, that you're teaming up with, of course, that you're in contact with one of your friends that you're queuing with, is the word I was looking for. And then you could do the thing where you just constantly pick up one, fire, constantly pick up one, fire. But I don't know. That's the only scenario I see currently. Melee strikes makes up the next 6 ranged shots gain 15% power, while ranged hits makes the next 6 melee strikes gain 50% power. Melee kills resets the cooldown of blessed shots. In other words, it has both the previous talent of you do a melee, you kill something with your melee weapon, and it resets your guaranteed critical hit. And at the same time, every time you do a melee strike, your next ranged attack will get power, and every time you do a ranged attack, your next melee will get 50% power. So this seems like a great talent, amazing. And stacks up to 6 times, right? So you can essentially collect 6 stacks of 15% power, either from melee to ranged or from ranged to melee. So that's pretty much just an amazing talent all around. Ranged critical hits grant Victor and his allies 10% increased movement speed for 10 seconds. I mean, if you're just doing a full-on like a full team speed run, then I guess. I mean, it's too specific, I feel like. I think mostly you're just gonna go for the power. I'm not saying that it doesn't have any good uses, but I think this is gonna be fairly niche as a talent. Melee kills reload Victor's ranged weapon, killing an elite enemy with a melee attack while out of ammo restores 20% of your max ammunition. So essentially, you shoot something with your repeater pistol, and now you're out of ammo. You kill something, now you get both 20% ammo and it reloads. That's how I'm reading that. But again, it doesn't take long. It doesn't have a long reload time, really. So actually, I think what would be better with this is actually the new crossbow split fire. The new volley crossbow. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Because it still has, even with the reduction, it has a 4-second reload time. So I could see you just spamming that, and then killing something, instant reloading, and getting the ammunition. That could be viable, and interesting, and funny. So I think that's good. Cooldown reduction increased from 20% to 15%. Alright. Cooldown reduction increased to 20 from 15, yeah. Buckshot modified, and now added shield penetration to the blast, and an added effect. Each kill with the blast increases the amount of pellets in the next blast by 1 up to a max of 20, which of course means you start out with very few pellets. Then you kill, let's say, 6 minions, now you have more pellets. And those extra pellets you could then use to hopefully kill even more stuff with your then ulti until you reach 20. But it's not going to be permanent, right? So it's always going to be predicated on how many kills you manage to get with the ulti on the prior shot. I'm not certain if the damage is going to be sufficient for it to potentially be worth it. So like do a stack up, get 20 pellets, and then use it, save it for a boss or whatever. I don't know. We'll have to see the damage profile of that, but definitely interesting. I like the mechanic. It's definitely interesting mechanic. Sienna. Searing Grasp, increased duration of the dot effect to 4 seconds. Heavy attacks increase push angle of the next push by 30%. No, by 70%, sorry. That's a weird change. Duration of dot effect to 4 seconds, and the heavy Moving on to Sienna. Now, let's see here. Searing Grasp. Increased duration of dot effects to 4 seconds, and heavy attacks increase the push angle of the next push by 70%. That's weird. Ain't got much to say about that. Not certain. It could be... I don't know. Feel a little bit weird about it. It doesn't sound inherently fitting. But I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Increase the chance of explosion to 40%. So essentially chain reaction. There's a slight chance, used to be a slight chance that, you know, you kill a minion and while it's burning it would explode. And now that the odds have been increased to 40%. I guess that's also with the new pseudo-random distribution. So every time you have, 2.5 kills, one of them should explode, statistically speaking. Numb to pain, added effect. Venting decreases the amount of overcharge generated by blood magic by 16%, stacks up to 3 times. So that's pretty, I like that. That's pretty decent. That's a total of 48% reduction to overcharge generated, specifically by blood magic. But does that also apply to the actual, like when you take damage? Does that also apply there? I'm not certain. Because if it does, then you could have, you know, the 20% from heating on your weapon, which would be a total reduction of 68%, which would be pretty nice. I mean, that would all pretty much make it worth it to vent before getting hit in the face, potentially. Again, I'm not sure again how quick do the stacks charge up. I assume it's just per damage taken. Regardless, it's interesting. I'll have to do more testing. Haven't tried it out, but definitely better than before. Let's put it that way. Could only go one way, though. So that's good. Overcharging makes Sienna start rapidly exchanging 6% of her health to 10% cooldown. Now, so if you accidentally overcharge using your staff, or if you get hit, take enough damage, then overcharge, you'll then start exchanging 6% health for 10% cooldown. Essentially giving you a better chance of not dying by it sort of reduces the skill cap of the hero, but I can see why they did this, right? It gives you a better chance to then just exchange health, but get your actual ulti from in time, and yeah, explode, saving your life. So interesting change. I don't think I'll be using it much, but We'll see. Only time will tell. Adds a burning aura that ignites nearby enemies when activating Living Bomb, massively increasing the stacker power of Living Bomb. So way more stacker makes sense and matters, but a burning aura that ignites nearby enemies when activating, right? So it's if that's just a one-time dot, because a burning aura, yeah, it's just a one-time dot to the explosion, I guess. Not that interesting. I mean, you're not really proccing for dots when playing Unchained, so yeah, I don't know. Doesn't sound that significant. The stagger could matter though, for sure, but still, I feel like they could do more with this ulti, like so much more. Yeah, but that's just my opinion. Increased duration of power bonus to 15 seconds, down from 10 seconds. Again, it's like, okay, I'll ulti, now I gain a bunch of power, but now all my overcharge is gone, right? So I don't know. Again, if assuming the healing is still there, then I still think that's the best for most players. But again, we'll have to see. Anyways, that was the big beautiful burrito update. Now, that's a lot of changes in one update, and some really significant ones. Most of it I think is a good change. I'm not saying that I'm a fan of everything, but I shouldn't be. It would be really weird if I just went, oh amazing, goddamn, I can subscribe to every single thing. Definitely a few points that I disagree with, but when that's said, I think overall, good effort. Definitely some good balance changes. Let's see how the Vermintide community receives it. Hopefully they are going to do a tweak or two, because I definitely feel like there's a point or two of contact where it's like, that has to change. But I'm really curious to see how everything's going to fit together with the new crits and the new changes to stacker and stuff like that. So, not to stacker, but to the actual headshots and critical hits stacker ring to be specific. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys this time. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe, please. It's free, and that's a great price. I totally stole that from PewDiePie. Anyways, as always, I love you guys. Stay awesome. Peace out.